live on our website. Oh no. This book is asking for two-factor authentication. Let me see if I can get around that. Please stand by. Oh, man. Oh, good. Please stand by. Almost there. We're live on all our channels.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's 6 o'clock, and so I'm going to call to order this September 8th, 2020 City of Gallatin Council Committee meeting to order. Before we proceed, I'll read the governor's order, which states, pursuant to Governor Lee's executive orders number 16, number 34, number 51, and number 60, and the need to limit the community spread of COVID-19, the September 8th, 2020 Gallatin Council Committee meeting will be held by electronic means. The meeting will be live streamed to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of the council and citizens of Gallatin. And on the screen now are instructions for those who might want to join this Zoom meeting or join us by phone. So before we proceed, we'll need a motion to accept this order.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Not, Connie, would you call for a roll call?
Vice Mayor Camp. Councilman Alexander.
Yes.
Councilman Fan.
Here.
Councilman Fennell.
Yes.
Councilman Hayes.
Yes.
Councilwoman Love.
Yes.
And Councilman Overton.
Yes.
The vote is 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Next, we will have an actual roll call for the meeting. Connie?
Vice Mayor Camp.
Present.
Councilman Alexander.
Present.
Councilman Fan.
Here.
Councilman Fennell.
Here.
Councilman Hayes.
Present.
Councilwoman Love.
Here.
And Councilman Overton.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Right, thank you. The minutes from August 11 and August 25 of 2020 are in our packets. We need a
Motion to approve both.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Overton and a second, I believe, by Councilman Alexander to approve both of those. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote to approve these minutes.
Vice Mayor Camp. Councilman Alexander.
Yes.
Councilman Fan.
Yes.
Councilman Fennell.
Yes.
Councilman Hayes.
Yes.
Councilwoman Love.
Yes.
And Councilman Overton.
Yes.
7 ayes and 0 nays.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have public recognition, which is the time in the meeting for people who wish to speak to the council to do so by calling in or by joining the Zoom meeting. I'd also need to let everyone know that Randy Jones, the developer, in the Twin Eagles subdivision, who has had the Twin Eagles extension onto Douglas Lane removed from our agenda and removed from discussion at this time. So anybody who is planning to speak on that may want to wait until it comes up again. Jeff, do we have anyone who wants to speak?
We do have someone who's used the raise your hand function. Mr. Javance, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening all. Just have a couple of quick questions. I'm reading the minutes of the last work session you just approved. And I'm reading there, Mr. Fenton asks that this be put on the agenda for the next work session, and council agreed to defer until the next work session. So my question is, if you agreed to defer it to the next work session, why got that noise ordinance be put on the last council session at the last minute, not on the agenda to be voted with nobody knowing about it? You guys approved it, it's on the minutes to be deferred until the next work session was today. But you added last week, not on the agenda, and I have to agree with Vice Mayor Camp. On words would say that's fishy. Yes, it is. So hopefully we'll get an answer to that. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see anyone else who's indicated they'd like to speak. That's everyone.
Thank you. Next on our agenda.
May I interrupt, Councilwoman Laurel? I'm sorry. And Jeff, would you please just give instructions to folks, because there are some new people on this call, and I want to make sure that they are aware of how to participate should they wish to speak.
Sure. We would ask that you use the raise your hand function if you're on the app or computer. I would be able to tell if someone were on cell phone, but if you were on cell phone, you would do *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute. But again, I can tell we just had someone raise their hand. We had a cell phone person just add on.
And then can you also describe how someone uses the raise their hand feature if they're not familiar with the Zoom meetings?
It's really below at the bottom of your screen where you have your buttons to choose from. There's a raise your hand button that you choose.
And I'll add that those buttons may not appear unless you move your cursor down there, and so move your cursor around the bottom of the screen so that you can actually see those buttons appear if you don't have them fixed on your screen. And I'm sorry to be persnickety about it, but I want to be as helpful as we can.
That makes it very clear. Vivian Huntsman, go ahead. You're unmuted, so go right ahead. Vivian Huntsman?
Does she need to push *6?
She just unmuted. We'll give the cell phone, since they just joined us, if the cell phone ending in 665 is interested in speaking, you hit *6 to unmute. And last call for Vivian Huntsman. You had raised your hand. Would you like to speak? Vivian, I noticed you took your hand off and then raised your hand again, so you may be having trouble with your microphone. I'm not sure.
Huntsman looks unmuted. Can you try and speak and see if we can hear you?
afraid that's the best we can do for now. Vivian Huntsman, I just remembered a note. I knew she was going to enter because she had talked with Angela earlier. She was wanting to speak about her fence, but I'm afraid we're just not hearing what she has to say. We have one more. Frank Marchese, go ahead.
Yes, I'm just letting you know you have a different Zoom meeting ID in the printed agenda than you do in the Yes, I just wanted to point out, I joined late because the meeting agenda is different than the actual meeting agenda in the link. You're off by one number, 49 and 59. If you look at the agenda, it's probably why you don't have a lot of people joining.
Might I interject and make a suggestion, Councilwoman Love?
Yes.
Okay, here's what I would suggest we do, okay? I would ask that Mr. Henschel go back on social media, correct the ID for tonight's meeting, and then reopen public recognition at the end of the meeting.
59.
And those who are watching, I would suggest that you realize
Probably
the opportunity
joining.
to speak, but also nothing is being decided. Every judge, Councilwoman Love.
Yes.
Okay, here's what I would suggest we do, okay? I would ask that.
I believe we were hearing Mr. Marchese's playback of the live video.
I'm not hearing anything at all.
Yeah.
Mayor,
like to
you go ahead.
Mayor, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
No.
Yeah, we can now. I know you got, somebody had voiced over you, so go ahead and say what you said a while ago.
Okay, what I was saying is that my suggestion would be, since it does appear that we have the Zoom ID incorrect somewhere, is for Mr. Henschel to post on social media the correct meeting ID and tell people they can join through that meeting ID, and to reopen at the end of this meeting public recognition, and just remind people that there are no decisions being made this evening beyond potentially moving things onto council to be voted upon. So if they have something that they want to weigh in that's on tonight's agenda, we will still have an opportunity to hear from them before it is voted on.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say I did check our website has the correct address. It just appears to be wrong on the agenda itself. But yes, I will make that post.
Thank you.
I mean, if that's what you all want to do, I was making a suggestion.
That's fine with me. It's fine with everybody else, so we can move on.
Go.
So let's move on to mayor's comments at this time, and we'll add public recognition at the end.
Thank you. I just have two things this evening. One, well, maybe three. I do want to recognize Waddell and Reed for another movie on the lake last week. They sponsored that, and I think, I hope it went well. I went in attendance, but I think it's a really neat thing that they're doing, particularly in this COVID time, to provide entertainment for people in a different venue that is safe for everyone. Wanted to mention that. Also have a proclamation to read, but I really want to recognize that today is our planning director, Bill McCord's birthday. So I would ask that you all wish him a happy birthday this evening. With that, I'll move on to sharing this resolution with you all. This is for National Recovery Month, and I'm going to read it for you now. It says, whereas mental and or substance use disorders affect communities nationwide, yet with commitment and support, people with these disorders can achieve healthy lifestyles and lead rewarding lives in recovery. And whereas over 56,000 Tennesseans received publicly funded behavioral health services in 2018 to treat mental and/or substance use disorders, and whereas Sumner County is fortunate to have a caring community and abundant resources. Sorry, I lost my place. I'm trying to read this off my computer. Abundant resources, including volunteer behavioral health, Sumner County Anti-Drug Coalition, Recovery Court of Sumner County, and many treatment providers and recovery groups which help people achieve healthy lifestyles, both physically and emotionally. And whereas through National Recovery Month, people become more aware and recognize the signs of mental and/or substance use disorders and understand their impact on individuals, families, and communities. And whereas National Recovery Month delivers the important message that behavioral health is essential to one's overall wellness, raises awareness of these diseases, and educates communities of the resources that are available. And whereas evidence has shown that prevention and effective treatment have helped many recover, we were able to celebrate a substantial decline in alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, and cocaine use in our region. And whereas there's been a marked increase in the use of heroin and prescription drugs in Sumner County during the pandemic, we must acknowledge this and resolve to continue our work towards a healthier, drug-free community. And whereas through the observance of National Recovery Month, we will continue to work to improve lives of those affected by mental and/or substance use disorders and acknowledge the influences of all organizations and individuals who work to break the chains of these disorders. Now, therefore, I, Paige Brown, Mayor of the City of Gallatin, Tennessee, ask citizens to join me in celebrating this September as National Recovery Month and call upon our community to observe this month with compelling programs and events to support prevention, treatment, and recovery from mental and/or use disorders. And if you saw the purple balloons around the square this past weekend, that's what that was about. It was about overdose awareness. So just one of the many efforts that's going on in our community to help spread the word about mental and substance abuse.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll move on to our agenda now. And for number one on the agenda is an update on the comprehensive development plan. Mr. McCord or Mr. Skipper?
Okay, good evening, everyone. This is Michael Skipper with the Greater Nashville Regional Council. It's a pleasure to be with you. I always enjoy my time with this distinguished group of leaders, even if virtually. Let me start by wishing Bill McCord a happy birthday.
Yes.
Like me, he is a solid Virgo. And if you've worked with Bill, you probably recognize that as well. I appreciate the opportunity to be at the top of the agenda to provide a brief update on Plan Gallatin, which is your process to update the city's comprehensive plan for growth and development. And before I get into this update, just want to thank Bill McCord and his staff within the planning department and Rosemary Bates with the Gallatin EDA to help us prepare the slides and the update that we have for you this evening. Before I get into it, I'd just like to say a couple words about the Greater Nashville Regional Council for those who are on the line who aren't familiar. But the Greater Nashville Regional Council, or GNRC, is a public body that was created by the state legislature back in the 60s. It's owned and operated by cities and counties across Middle Tennessee, and it works alongside those city and county governments on issues related to economic development, community development, social services. So we exist primarily to support city and county governments across the region and largely outside of the city of Nashville. Tonight, I've got a quick update for you on Plan Gallatin, which is an initiative that we've been working alongside you on now for a little over a year. Even before then, we had worked with the city council on a strategic plan, which was initially the big decision point by the council to go in and update the land use policies and the design guidelines that are influencing how growth takes shape across the city, which is particularly important in this time of rapid development. Even with COVID-19, we're still seeing quite a bit of development happen across the region. Tonight's update is going to be focused on quickly updating you on some of the community engagement efforts that have been underway. There's a little bit of a pause as the March tornadoes rolled through and then COVID-19 pandemic hit. So we regrouped and really restructured a lot of what we had planned to do with the public, which was going to be out and about in the community. So we had to sort of redesign that and put it all online. But I think the team did a really good job of repurposing the tools to make sure that we were really fulfilling our responsibility to listen to the public so that y'all were presented a plan that you could have confidence in in terms of it representing the wishes of the community that you serve. So I'm going to focus largely on update to the community engagement, but also want to give you a sense of where we are with the plan drafting as we do that alongside your planning team. Tonight, I'm going to talk about the results of the visual preference survey that we conducted last month. But before I get into this, I do want to really remind you about the big kickoff, this sort of home stretch that we're entering to sort of go through some public discussions about the different scenarios that the city has available to itself as you decide how you want to grow. So that sort of coming down the home stretch, if you will, on the heels of the Derby weekend, is really where the meat gets on the bone for developing this plan. And before we start drafting a plan, I thought it was really important to engage the citizenry and the businesses and just what their options are. You know, there's we had presented back in early June the projected impacts of what would happen if the city grew at a very low density. And then we also projected the potential impacts of what would happen if the city grew in a much more compact way. And when I say projected impacts, what I mean is that we are looking at how would that growth pattern influence or impact your transportation systems, your other infrastructure, traffic congestion, and demand for public services. So we looked at what the impact would be on a host of different growth scenarios, 3 to be specific: sprawling trend, like your present days patterns, and then a compact growth scenario. And we conducted a survey after the big public workshop we had on June 4th. There were a little over 100 folks that participated in that workshop where we went through each of those scenarios and showed how they would impact your quality of life moving forward. Of those 100 folks who participated in that event, 60% of them followed up with us through a survey to weigh in on their preferences with the information that was provided at the workshop. So 60% of those who participated in the workshop then did the survey, and the results from that survey, before I get to this one, I think are important to remind ourselves of. 66% of those who became educated about the choices in front of you ended up preferring the compact growth scenario. So we had the sprawling scenario, we had the trend scenario, which is kind of where you are today, just projecting that forward. And then we had the compact growth scenario. And so 2/3 of those who went through that process ultimately preferred the compact scenario. And about 23% of the participants preferred the sprawling scenario. And you know, when I first saw that result, I thought, well, that's kind of a polarized result, in that you've got the two biggest preferences being compact and sprawling. They seem like we're polar opposites of each other, but they're actually very complementary, which I thought ultimately was a good takeaway from that survey. Because if you think about it, the more you can grow compact in the right areas, the more it preserves your ability to have low density and open space in the other parts of the city. It's really sort of this in between that you find yourselves in, that where you get a lot of homogeneity, a lot of the same thing being built across the city, which doesn't provide a lot of options for residents and businesses. So I was actually quite pleased to see that there was a little bit of preference for the two extremes, because they really go hand in glove when it comes to building a city. Another interesting finding from that survey was that 42% of the people who went through that workshop shifted their thoughts on how they viewed growth and development. The information that was provided in terms of the implication of the options that were presented to the city translated into people changing their minds about what they wanted. So a lot of people did start off wanting compact growth, but by the end of that workshop, found themselves much more attracted to that type of development pattern. So that was the survey we did before we launched the visual preference survey. This is sort of round 2 of the community engagement process that we've been doing since that June 4th workshop. And so I'm going to get into some of the results here. In all, we had 826 folks take the survey. Most of those were done in the first week of the survey going live. And the average time it took people to do this was about 7 minutes, 52 seconds. That's a really important number, because it was a pretty burdensome survey. People had to wade through a lot of photos to tell us what they liked and didn't like, or what they thought was suitable or not suitable for the city of Gallatin. So I was really impressed that many people took that much time online to weigh in on the preferences. A little bit about the respondents. I always think it's important. These are online surveys where anybody can participate. They're not random sample surveys like the mayor and Rosemary just did through ETC Institute. So this is a convenient sample, so it's just anybody can take it. So it's really important to understand how this jives with the population across the city. So let me go through a couple of characteristics of the people who completed the survey. So most of them have been in Gallatin for less than 10 years, although you did have 45% say that they've been in Gallatin for more than a decade. A pretty good distribution, I thought, in terms of the people that came to the table in terms of their historic experience with the city of Gallatin. Home zip codes, most of the folks were their home addresses in Gallatin, but you had a few zip codes. You got Castilian Springs and Hendersonville and Bethpage and Portland up on the screen. So you have some folks that don't live in Gallatin, but they work here or they have investments in here that participated in this particular survey. In terms of where they work, 70% plus said they do have a job. 36% say they work inside the Gallatin city limits. A little under 30% said they're not currently employed. In terms of age distribution, this is where you start to see a little deviation from those who actually live in the city, but by and large, it's pretty good numbers from a respondent age standpoint. We certainly undersampled the younger folks. 18 to 24% were very underrepresented in the survey results I'm about to share with you, and we oversampled those 55 to 74 by quite a bit. But we did oversample them as much as you would typically see in a survey effort like this. So I was really pleased, even though we were undersampling them, sort of the younger and middle-aged folks do have a voice in the survey. And of course, before we wrap all this up, we'll make sure we're leveling that out and are held accountable to making sure we're representing the interest of all those who live in Gallatin. But that's a look at the age of the respondents here. This is race and ethnicity. Certainly, as is the case with a lot of these surveys, we tend to oversample white Caucasians, undersample minority populations. It was no different here. We do need to make sure that as we begin drafting this plan and provide recommendations to you, that it is indeed attentive to the needs of everybody who lives in the city of Gallatin, not just those who participate in the survey efforts. The respondent household income, we generally undersampled low income, oversampled higher income earners throughout the city. So that's another thing we just need to be aware of as we interpret the results and as we move forward with plan drafting. And then we track for any of the things that we do with the public, we track their prior experience with Plan Gallatin. And we were happy to see that 26% of the people who did the survey were new to the process. So we're building a bigger audience with every single outreach effort that we put forward, and that's good to see. It's also good to see that more than half of the folks who participated had heard about Plan Gallatin in the news, so that's a good testament to Jeff and Josh with the paper. So I appreciate all the work that you all have done to get the word out. So let's get into the results. So the first thing I'm going to share with you is we had packaged together different options for residential character and different options for non-residential character. What I mean by that is like office and commercial, other uses. And we asked people to essentially tell us whether they wanted to see more of that or less of that in the city as the city grows. And so I'm going to kind of go through residential first, then I'm going to pause and give you my take on what we're seeing, and also just a few tips for how to interpret this and how not to interpret. So the first thing we tested was large lot residential. And for this option, we provided these two images. Hopefully they come across your screen clear. Hopefully you can, I should have checked to make sure everybody can see my screen. Okay, let me see if I can get this to full screen mode. I don't know if that's any better, but this is the two images that we provided to represent large lot residential. And what we found here is that, you know, by and large, people wanted more of this in the city of Gallatin as it grows. About 10% of those respondents that they didn't want any more of this. But the pattern as we go through from large lot down to multifamily, you definitely see a pattern of where people, more people are saying no more of this as you get a little bit more dense. And that's interesting. Remember that, because it's almost the opposite of what we find on the commercial non-residential side. And it's also somewhat of a contradiction with what people have said they wanted through some of the other tests that we've done. But just remember that. So medium lot residential, the images we tested and the results. Again, as we get more dense with the residential, a bit more folks say they want no more of this. But But what's really important to note, though, is that even with small lot residential, which you already have some of across the city of Gallatin, you still have a majority of folks saying they want more of this. Okay, so this is, even though there's a lot of red on the screen, it's important not to be overwhelmed by that color. It's just, it's just you're seeing the trend of a growing number of people who prefer to see a little bit less of the density moving forward from a residential perspective. Here's attached single family. You're still getting almost half of the participants saying they want more of this. Okay. Standard multifamily. This is probably, I think this ended up being the lowest rated residential option, with 85% saying they want no more of this. Again, I'll come back to some of the interpretation here. And then mid-rise multifamily actually had close to 30% of those participating that they would actually like to see more of this, either a lot more or some more of the mid and high-rise multifamily. So non-residential, this is where we tested different character for office, commercial, sort of the non-residential uses, the isolated development, and the strip development. The first two options we gave to folks were the least popular, with 43%, a little bit more than that, saying they want no more of this isolated development. But again, you still have half the folks saying that they would like to see a little bit more of this in the city of Gallatin. Strip development, by and large, people are sort of over this auto-centric sort of commercial corridor type of development in the city. Suburban lifestyle center, I think sort of, not to throw a Hendersonville example, but Indian Lake Village is an example of that sort of lifestyle center concept. Very popular with those who participate in the survey. Probably the most popular was this village or town center. So think sort of the urban Gallatin, not urban, but sort of the center city of Gallatin and the walkable neighborhoods around the center of town, or around the square, is the most popular of the choices for non-residential character that we saw. But mixed-use walkable corridors radiating out of downtown was also very popular. And then we lost a little bit of popularity when we started talking about building heights of non-residential. Although I'd say that a third of the people who participated still would like to see more mid and high-rise development in the city of Gallatin. So a couple of notes about this before I move on to the other series of images that we tested is, one, it's important for us as planners to make sure that the plan that we're preparing for your consideration is giving enough options so that anyone living in Gallatin can see something they want to live in, and something that they want to work in, and something they want to shop in. It's important that we don't do sort of land use by democracy. We all like the idea of democracy, but in thinking about the development patterns, it's important to make sure that everybody has an opportunity. So the goal here is to strike the right balance between the forms that you've seen on the screen, but understanding where there are going to be shortcomings or pitfalls or red flags if we do pursue an option that I think is really important. So moving on to the second part of the survey that we did is we just basically threw up a series, we presented a series of images to the public, just in sort of seemingly random order. They were not explained, it was just an image, and we asked on a sliding scale for folks to say that it was or not suitable for the city of Gallatin. And so what I'm sharing with you here is just the results of that, the raw scores that were generated by that sliding scale as selected by all 820 something participants, just the raw scores. I'm going to go through these probably without much explanation, just to give you a sense of how these things rated as a result of the survey. So this is the top rated photo. It scored 86 out of 100. So it was determined to be very suitable as a landscape for the city of Gallatin. And again, I'm going to do this without commentary, just kind of flip through these. So already you're seeing a really big attraction to green space, but also walkability. And so it's like you've seen images that were both very dense and very low dense, and not really much in between. So that's very interesting. we'll just keep going through these. And so far, all these images that I've flipped through so far, even though they are in a sort order, are all images that were found to be suitable for the city of Gallatin. Still suitable. And about here is when we start to make the transition away from suitability, and now we're in the not suitable range. And so this is where most folks are saying this is not really what we're looking to achieve with the city's growth. I believe this is the last two. These are the last two photos. And again, this is a representation of that strip development that scored so poorly in the earlier section of the survey. So that's we really wanted to share with you the raw results, but let you know where we're headed with this. There's even though it seems very simplistic, just be looking at photos and scores, there's a lot we can ascertain from what people like and don't like. But we've got to dig fairly deep to find it. We've got to make sure that we're not getting misled because people are taking photos of higher image quality or where there's an age of development influence or something about the photo itself that's sort of leading to people's opinions. So we're gonna go through this pretty systematically to find the correlations between the image's score and some of the characteristics that you would be able to influence through the comprehensive plan. We're also going to be looking at which pictures had the most consensus, whether it was consensus for suitability or not, and which photos were the most divisive. I don't mean divisive in a negative way, I just mean where half the people really loved it and half the people really hated it. So it's really important to look at all of that. And we're not going to try to guess at this. So what we plan to do is pull together at least one focus group, maybe two, just depends on how it goes, with people who actually did the survey and get them to get into a discussion about why they weighed in the way they did. So we make sure we're interpreting this the right way. Again, the goal here is just to make sure that the plan is accommodating anyone who might live in Gallatin and to strike the right balance between what the community as a whole is preferring and what an individual homeowner or resident within Gallatin would like to have as an option. So let's look at those results. A quick update on the plan drafting. We continue to meet with the planning department staff weekly. We are really very much now into sort of writing the plan itself. The appendix is largely finished, except for a couple of placeholders that are waiting on the process to finish playing out. Probably the next thing that you'll be seeing from me is this item number 4 here, is that we want to make sure that the land use policies and the design guidelines and any other recommendations that you're going to be asked to endorse at the end of this process are indeed sort of achieving your goals. And so we've got, if you remember the plan outline as we've talked about it previously, there are 3 strategy sections of this plan that are really defining the vision that you have for the city. One is a strategy for economic development. One is a strategy to ensure quality of life and affordability. And one is a strategy to make sure you're preserving what you like about Gallatin, whether it's historic resources or open space and natural resources. And so we're currently putting together some working groups to make sure that the strategy chapters that we're writing for the plan are really reflective of what we've heard through the community engagement process and what you have in mind. And to that end, these working groups will be they will consist of representatives from the council, the planning commission, and then relevant boards and commissions and committees that exist within city government, historic preservation and additional development board, for example. So we'll work with the mayor and the staff to make the right connections, but you will be seeing an invitation from us in the near future. I'd like to get at least one of you on each of these strategy groups. Just again, this is not labor intensive. It's just to make sure that the vision that the plan is aspiring to is consistent with what you have in mind, so there are no surprises by the time we get to the end of this process. Again, the strategies are going to dictate the plan policies and guidelines. Those things aren't going to be written until we know exactly what it is you want to accomplish. If we write them beforehand, then it's probably going to be a plan that you don't believe in or have a lot of confidence in terms of what it will create. So with that, I'd be happy to stick around for questions or comments. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. And we're only a phone call or email away if you need anything from us. With that, I'll turn it back over to Councilmember Love or the mayor.
Ms. Love, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Hey, Michael, this is Sean Fennell. What about getting some of these copies of these documents that we just seen right here? Where can I get that at?
I can pretty much everything we have, the planning staff would have, but I can work with you online if there's a specific list. I can make sure that you get that pretty rapidly.
Kind of like the charts and the numbers you had out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, I thought this was so interesting, especially when you were using those photographs. I was pleased that at least that number answered and gave their preferences, because it's really interesting for us to see. So thank you for doing all that, and I can't wait to see the next segment of this. Does anyone else have any comments? Thank you again so much.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
We look forward to the next segment. Okay, second on our agenda, I can't wait to see what this is about. Zach Wilkerson or Nick is going to tell us about downtown crosswalks and little green men and alternatives to the crosswalks, I believe.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Like you said, the last several months, there's been a lot of concern about our green men downtown. So, have put together some estimates on what I guess a potential alternative would be to the green man, and just wanted to give a brief history, real quick too, on how they came to be down there. They were installed in fall of 2014. Had lots of business tenants and a lot of people that worked at the courthouse were calling, concerned about where they're crossing on a regular basis, and just basically for pedestrian safety. After we put them up, we did have, I think it did alleviate the pedestrian safety issue. Now people, I guess the motoring public has expressed concerns through the years. But in the meantime, I'm not aware of any pedestrian incidents. Here recently, we have had an increased amount of issues with the green men getting hit, and I'm not sure if that's due to increased traffic or they've become targets or what, but so there has been a lot of increased maintenance here lately. Put together what we spent up to date on keeping the green men up and having to reinstall and that kind of thing. We've spent close to $10,000 since they were put in 2014, just maintaining them. And here recently, we're spending close to 5 man-hours a week just putting them back up, replacing the parts that get broken. We replaced a lot of the items, the pole and the mounts, with higher wear pieces, but still they're getting hit frequently enough. They are a continual maintenance issue. So that being said, we worked with engineering potential solution that they were comfortable with from the safety side of it, and something that we could install in-house, put together a cost estimate of what that'd look like. And but also wanted to give y'all a chance to look at it to see what it looked like. And Mayor, were you able to get your video to where we can show?
You're muted, Paige.
You're muted.
Sorry, I think I can. I uploaded it to Facebook, so if I can share my screen and play it from there, it should show. You want me to do that? Try it?
Sure, I'll stop sharing mine.
Let's see. Give me just a second. I'm sharing my screen, so now I'm going to share this. Oops, sorry, there's audio.
That's nice and bright.
That's at nighttime, and it's also visible during the day. Let's see if I can replay it again for you. It's also very visible during the day. Now, this has one strip on one side of the crosswalk, but there are lights on both. They're coming at both sides of the little fixtures. So it's visible from both directions.
Paige, is that constantly flashing like that? Is it activated when you get close to it? Or how does that work?
Okay, this one, Sarah walked through those sensors. Those sensors set that off, which is a little different than what Gallatin is looking at. But yeah, those are sensor.
Okay.
Sensor prompted.
Well, I like the brightness.
I would like to say that in the daytime, you could be a couple of 100 yards away from it, and you could really see it in the daytime. You wouldn't think you could, but it's very bright.
Where have you seen that, Sean?
Florida.
Okay.
White House has it too. If you guys are ever driving up that way, is it Tyree? I don't know what road that is going into White House, but they have it as well. Tyree Springs Road.
So we put together a cost estimate for system very similar to what we just shown. Like the mayor said, it would be pushback button activated, not with a sensor like that. That would be an option, but it would be a premium in cost for sure. So as we're coming up with that cost estimate, this is a related, somewhat unrelated, but also I think something that needs to be thought about as this is decided on. First challenge is getting power to the lights, to the road. Of course, one option is using solar power, but downtown where there's so much shade, I would recommend against solar power just from an aesthetics standpoint and also maintenance on those batteries. We have similar systems for school zone flashers, and their maintenance on them is not great. The batteries don't hold up well, and so I would recommend against that option. But another option is that we run power from the county courthouse. That's of course assuming that we're able to get permission from them for that. But I'd kind of recommend against that option as well, just because right now during Christmas and other holiday times, we're always looking for different power sources downtown, and we'd be limited on what we could pull from whatever the circuit is that we'd be hooking to at the county. And then that brings up the third option. We've worked with Gallatin Department of Electricity on this, and right now we pay for the power on the street lights in the downtown area. We also pay maintenance for them. So the other option is for the city to take over maintenance of one particular circuit in the downtown area. We're already paying for it. We would just stop paying for the maintenance portion of it and start doing that in-house, which we do, and we generally help with the maintenance anyways. So it's not going to be a huge burden on our staff. It's stuff they're already doing and helping out with. And that would also free us up for the ability to, when it comes Christmas time, or other events, whether it be Square Fest or something like that, that we have lots of different power options to tie into. And the electric department would be very happy not to have to deal with this when it comes Christmas time to plug those lights up. So if we do decide to do something different and go in the direction of the in-street lights, I would recommend that we go with option 3, which would probably require a separate agreement, but I can take care of that, and I'd be bringing that to y'all later on. So as far as the cost, put together the cost for the 3 different locations. One of them would be at the library, and then also the second one would be crossing from Swaney Swifts to the courthouse, and then also put together a estimate for City Hall. The 2 crosswalks at the library and this is just parts, supplies, and that kind of thing. We would be doing the work in-house, with all in-house labor, and you'd be looking at $61,000 for the library, $56,000 for the Swaneys, excuse me, and $15,000 for the city hall. So depending on if we decide to go with one or all options, those are what the cost would look like. They are expensive. We would hope maintenance would be little to none. The biggest cost is in the lights themselves. As you can see in that breakdown, that depending on the more lights that you have, which is depending on the number of lanes of traffic, the more expensive it is. So.
Do we have an estimate on the maintenance after it's installed?
Depending on, we've talked to two different vendors. One of the vendors had a 3-year warranty on the whole system. The other vendor was a 5-year warranty. And that was on all hardware and parts. Other than that, though, we've reached out to White House, but I don't know that they've had them long enough to really tell about long-term maintenance. In the short term, they indicated they had some trouble, but it was more installation related. So, and we can reach out to some other cities that have had them in for a longer period of time to see what kind of long-term maintenance there is. But I think the biggest maintenance is those lights have a lifespan that I'm going to guess is in somewhere around 5 years or longer, because if that's when their warranty's running out, that's probably about the time some of them start failing.
This is interesting.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Steve.
I didn't say anything. I just wondered if anybody looked at the maintenance cost after. Well, I guess we need to look at it after the warranties run out, if we've can get with anybody that has had these for a while. That would be my only issue.
So that will they also be reflective light? Like
they're not reflective. They only light up when they've been actuated. So you would just see, I guess, the light portion when somebody has pressed it for whatever period of time that we set them for.
So these are not sensors like we saw a minute ago. You push a button like you would control the traffic light.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Now we can price out the sensor type, but my guess is they would be more expensive. And then dealing with other equipment that has sensors like that, I would guess the maintenance dealing with those sensors would go up as well.
A couple of things that I might be able to add. I did talk to one of the shop owners that was there, and they watched the light in the crosswalk. It's in their front door, and the guy at the cash register said that they had the ones that push button first, but hardly nobody would hit the push button. They would just run across the road. But the thing is, with the sensor, once the body activates that, they come on. Another thing, back to Steve Fan, you're talking about the maintenance of the lights. I did walk out in the street and look, and because it was brought to my attention, a car running over it all the time. It was real heavy duty piece that was down, embedded into the concrete. In the way that light was laid out, it was like a little bit of a ramp or something. It was made so it would be run over. So I thought that it would last quite a bit. One guy said the only thing that they ever seen that they had to do is they'd have to go up there every once in a while and change one of the bulbs inside of it.
Anybody else have anything to say about it?
I think it'd be a lot better than the little green means.
Do you all want to ask Zach to go in and get some definite estimates? Or are
hardcore?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, definitely get some hardcore.
These costs are about as hard a cost as we can get unless we actually bid it out. And we can go through that process of bidding it out, and we'll have, I guess, more definitive cost at that. But we've gotten quotes from the vendors, and they've indicated, hey, this is what we're going to bid.
So the distance from side to side is different, because I know that it's higher up by the library than it is down by the city hall.
Yes, the number of lanes that you'd be crossing, which in turn requires a higher number of the lights. City hall's 3 lanes, where in front of the library, one crosswalk's actually, I think, 2.5 lanes or so, and the other one's more like 4. As you approach the signal, the number of lanes increases. So.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
My question, Zach, is have you already identified the number of lights that you think are appropriate for the crosswalk? Because I was surprised when I came down here and I looked at the number of lights. It was far fewer than I expected. I think it had 4 across.
We used what the vendor, well, we talked to 2 different vendors. What one of the vendors had recommended, their recommendation is 5 on each side of an individual crosswalk for every 3 lanes. If you increase the number of lanes, you want to go or add at least an additional 1 to 2, depending on how many lanes you're increasing to. So I noticed the one in your video, it only had lights on one side of the crosswalk.
It did, but the lights blink in both directions.
Right.
So, but that's also a street I thought of later. So.
Yeah, don't look like to me you would need them on both sides of the crosswalk. Seems like one side would be sufficient. It seems like a
Maybe
minimum,
down the middle.
It seems like a minimum of 4 should be sufficient.
There's actually someone that's commented on social media that Lee University has had these since 2013. So they'd probably be somebody good to reach out to ask about the maintenance and the how resilient they are.
Yeah.
I'd say a lot of that's going to be the traffic flow too, how long they last, how much traffic runs over them.
Right, and both the vendors recommended, hey, try to space them where they're not in the wheel path. But in really all those areas, there's a lot of traffic starting to merge or get ready for the signal at Water, where they're going to be hit a lot, like you said.
Like the little green
meanie? Yes, sir.
I would like to see you reach out and ask these questions at Lee University and maybe in White House. Find out how people feel about it, if they recommend one thing over another.
Sure. Absolutely, yeah. We'll reach out for some long-term people that have dealt with them long-term, and then also look into some different design options on if we had them on just on one side of the crosswalk with lights shining in both directions versus kind of what we've priced out is lights on each side of the crosswalk just shining in the direction of traffic. So we can do that and bring it back to you at the next work session.
Thank you for doing all this. And
yes, ma'am.
No,
Yeah,
we look forward to hearing more about it.
Tom, the ones that you looked at, do they protrude above the asphalt?
No, well, yes, a little bit, not a whole lot, but what I wasn't expecting to see it, and we rode up into the area and it's daytime. And like I said, I seen it from a long distance away in the middle of the day. It really stood out. At night, it really stood out, but it was kind of a little thump when the cars went over it, if they did hit it. But Zach was right. The way that they had them spaced out was out of the pretty much traffic pattern area. But it was really, it's the first time I've ever seen them, but it was really nice.
The ones that we priced out are, on paper at least, snow plowable. They say you can hit it with a snow plow and they're going to stay. As far as on installation, you actually core drill a hole in the pavement. So they are recessed with just a little bit sticking out, enough that the light can be seen from above. And then around them essentially.
Do they have anywhere that?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see that. That's the asphalt around it, and then that's the actual unit with light being shined right there.
So would the lights be white instead of yellow?
One vendor said they will only sell yellow. The other one said they'll do it whatever color you want. I will say METCD does recommend, which is the manual and uniform traffic control devices, kind of how we try to keep all signs and traffic stuff in compliance with that. They recommend only yellow. They didn't give any specific guidance on why, and I can see the justification or the reasoning on both ends of it, but they recommend just yellow, but white is an option.
Anybody else?
Are these designed to stop the traffic for the pedestrian?
I mean, I think the design intent of them is to bring attention to the crosswalk so that if there is a pedestrian crossing, that the motorist will stop. Now,
Exactly. Will a snow cloud mess them up?
supposedly, no. They're designed real similar on the interstate. You see them, but they're just reflective. They're not actually powered on the middle lane of the interstate. They are designed for a plow to go over it. And now, how long that lasts, I don't know. Part of it's probably depends on how well they're installed. And lots of different factors. But
Zach, is there a possibility that there could be a combination of reflective light and active motion lights? I mean, lights itself? Or it just have to be lights?
I hadn't seen them in that application. I think the concern would be that if they're reflective or if they're always on, that people will get used to them. I think the intent of those is that it only comes on when traffic or when there's a pedestrian going across it. We're trying to keep people from getting used to it always being on.
One of the sets that I looked at, to me, it looked like that they went in there and cut a strip of the pavement out, and then they put the lights in the line down there, and then they went in there and concreted up to the pavement. And I really went out there because I want to see how if they would get loosened up. And I stood on them, I got down, I kind of moved around the ones that was in the concrete. It was strong as it could be. I couldn't get it to move at all.
I wonder if we could have a manufacturer where it would say stop when it flashed.
Like verbally.
Well, well, it could do that too. But no, it'd be like if you put a stencil inside the light and it would flash stop.
Unless it was red.
Well, it just say stop. It could still be yellow.
Yeah, flashing like a bus sign. It says stop, but it flash.
There are street signs, like your standard pedestrian street sign that has lights on it. And we've got the signs up there. And they do sell those signs with the lights around the outside edge of them. I mean, that is an option if I can get prices for that. But you actually see those more often than you do the in-street lightings, but they're pretty common. I can get costs for that the next work session as well, if we wanted to use those in combination or just the signs themselves.
That, or just see if they could possibly make those in the street say stop.
Spell out STOP. Is what you mean, I think.
You misspelled stop, Linda.
Well, I think we need.
Whoa.
I agree with John D. that we need something there because I've noticed more and more that people are not stopping when there are pedestrians wanting to cross. So maybe people are just getting used to that green man in the middle. But I appreciate all that you've looked up, Zach, and I'm really look forward to hearing more about this. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. Appreciate it, man.
Okay, let's go on to number 3 on the agenda, Chuck Stewart.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. This ordinance is some cleanup. When we adopted the 2018 codes almost 2 years ago, we deleted Chapter 11 accessibility and went with the state's use at that time of the 2010 Disability Act. Now the state's in the process of adopting the 2018 codes, and it's time for us to put this back into our code.
Motion send on.
In a second. We have a motion by John
Second.
Hayes and a second by Sean to move that on to council. I guess we need a roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Camp,
Aye.
Councilman Alexander,
Yes.
Councilman Fan,
Yes.
Councilman Fennell,
Yes.
Councilman Hayes. Councilman
Hey,
Hayes.
he's on the phone. I think he's having computer problems. He's trying to get on the phone.
Okay. Councilwoman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Overton.
Yes.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Chuck. We'll move on to number 4 on the agenda, which will be presented by Bill McCord.
Okay, Council, I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that?
No.
No.
See you.
Okay. How about that?
No.
Yeah, still see you.
All right. Now that's disappointing.
No, you okay.
All right. Let's see. All right. Does that work?
Yes.
Yeah. Item number 4.
That's good.
Okay, great. This first, it's actually the second item that we're talking about tonight, is a project called Noble Park Townhomes. It consists of 34 townhomes on a 2.65 acre, 2 lots, 2.65 acres. And they're located generally at the northwest corner of Coles Ferry Road and Airport Road, across the street from the Sudden Service gas station. The property is zoned MRO, and the applicant looks to construct 36 townhome units called Noble Park Townhomes. And generally what I've got you shown here on the screen is the layout of the project with the landscaping that's proposed with this development. So their driveway would be from located from Coles Ferry Road, which is located on the south side of this drawing here. Airport Road is located on the east side, and the 2.65 acres would contain the 36 townhomes with interior parking and retention basins, mostly in the center of the property. A driveway, again, off of Coles Ferry Road only, not on Airport Road, and as far back generally as from the intersection as you can get with this parcel. Want you to be aware that, of course, Chapel Ridge apartment complex is to the north, and to the west is a future phase of Sumner Gardens apartments, and there's some other multifamily development to the south. Property is owned MRO. What the applicant wants to do, in addition to the townhomes, is also landscape property that's owned by the city. That's a wedge of property that you see here that I'm pointing to with my cursor, between the east side of their property and Airport Road right-of-way. It's possible that the city may need some of that property for widening of the roadway in the future, but maybe not all of it. So we've tailored the draft ordinance, and it's also written in the staff report that if the city feels that not all of this property is needed and would want to sell it, that it could be sold to the adjacent property owner and used for part of their development, not to increase the number of units, but just to allow more flexibility in the location of some of the units. That's not required by any means. We just wanted that option built into it so that they wouldn't have to come back to the city to address that issue with a specific plan change. But in the meantime, what the applicant will be doing is constructing sidewalks along Coles Ferry Road, and then the sidewalks would extend along Airport Road and match up with the existing sidewalk, which is adjacent to the Chapel Ridge apartment complex. So that would build a substantial portion of sidewalk and provide better access for the Chapel Ridge residents and Albion Estates residents to walk to Sudden Service in a safer manner. So this was reviewed by the Planning Commission, of course, as a master plan. Again, it didn't require zoning change, however, and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the master plan.
We have a motion to send it on?
Make a motion to send it on.
Okay. So we have a motion by Vice Mayor Camp, a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Councilman Fan. Is there any more discussion on this? Okay, if not, we'll go ahead and vote. Connie?
Vice Mayor Camp,
Aye.
Councilman Alexander,
Yes.
Councilman Fan,
Yes.
Councilman Fennell, Councilman Fennell, Councilman Hayes, Councilwoman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Overton,
Are we having technical difficulties?
I can see that Councilman Fennell is muted,
So is Councilman Overton.
and Councilman Overton is muted also.
okay. Do you want me to wait on them and see if they'll want to vote?
I think we should.
Okay,
Sean and Jimmy, you all are muted.
Well, we have 4. It's going to pass anyway. Just send it on. That's
Yeah.
all we're doing.
Okay, well, let's go ahead then, Connie.
all righty. Then we have 4 ayes and 0 nays.
Okay, thank you.
Aye.
Okay, and I think that was Councilman Fennell. Yes.
I'm having trouble.
Okay, so that makes it 5 ayes and 0 nays.
I was having trouble as well. I vote yes.
Okay, so now we're up to 6 ayes.
I don't know what happened, but I got kicked off.
I
Okay,
did too.
okay, then 6 ayes and 0 nays.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to, let's see, number 5 now. All right, this is Mr. McCord again. Bill?
Unmute.
This is a resolution to adopt a plan of services. Bill McCord.
Sorry about that. I keep covering things up and having to find out where I'm going here. Okay, back to sharing my screen. And let's get back up. This is a request for this is a city request. Now this is the planning department requesting this. It's to annex a segment of Hartsville Pike. And this segment would be located from the current city limits just to the east side of the Airport Road, Hartsville Pike intersection, eastwardly to an area which will be just to the east of the future intersection of the Gateway Drive extension and Hartsville Pike. And that will be eventually a signalized intersection. So the city would be maintaining the signal system. The property that's immediately to the north, where I'm showing on my cursor here, is recently annexed as part of the Woolhawk project. And also there's a pending annexation that will be considered for second reading by the city council on this property that I'm showing here. So we will have 2 fairly large parcels that will also be contiguous to this right-of-way annexation of the state roadway 25. It's about 12 acres of land within the right-of-way. It's roughly 100 feet wide and about around a mile long. So This will tie the city together, and then most importantly, will ensure that the signal will be installed in the city boundary, and we won't have to worry about the county maintaining a signal that really serves city development. So the Planning Commission did review this annexation. It also accompanies a plan of service, and really the only plan of service the city will have is emergency response to this corridor, as well as future installation of streetlights. So the Planning Commission did review this and recommended approval of both the plan of service and annexation.
Bill, if I understand this right, this is just mostly the road?
Yes, it's the right of way only. It doesn't include any private properties. So no private property owners that had not requested annexation are included in this.
That's what
We sent a letter out to those owners as well and let them know that.
Approximately how far is that from the red light at Airport Road and Hartsville Lot?
It's about a mile.
So it's, well, then it's past Sunny Mead subdivision?
It'll run past the Sunnymead subdivision. That's correct. That's right in the middle there.
The Sunny Mead won't be in the city, correct?
No, it's not.
Just the road.
Okay.
Just the highway in front of it.
Motion send it on.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Alexander, a second by Councilwoman Fan. Is there any discussion?
Can you hear me, Linda?
No, I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
I said, I've had 2 or 3 phone calls, people just emphasizing, I just want to emphasize that we're not taking anybody's house in the city by doing this. And I want everybody to understand that if you don't ask to be put in the city, we can't take you in anyway. So I've had 2 or 3 phone calls that said, y'all are gonna put me in the city, and I don't want to be in there. We're not putting anybody in the city.
Okay, thank you.
Correct, Mr. McCord?
Nobody is being annexed into the city with this annexation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So we've got a motion on the floor. Is there any more discussion? Okay, Connie will call for the vote.
Vice Mayor Camp, Councilman Alexander,
Yes.
Councilman Fan,
Yes.
Councilman Fennell,
Yes.
Councilman Hayes, Councilwoman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Overton.
Yes.
We have 6 ayes and 0 noes.
Okay, thank you, Connie. Number 6 is also Mr. McCord, talking about public right-of-way of the same area, I believe.
Yeah, I presented those last items together. The plan of service has to accompany the annexation. So we just need a separate vote.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Councilman Overton, a second by Councilman Alexander. Is there any discussion on number 6? It will call for the vote then, Connie.
Vice Mayor Camp, Councilman Alexander,
Yes.
Councilman Fan,
Yes.
Councilman Fennell,
Yes.
Councilman Hayes, no audible, Councilwoman Love,
Yes.
and Councilman Overton.
Yes.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you. Now we're on to number 7. This is being presented by Nick Tuttle, our city engineer.
Good evening. This is Nick Tuttle, the city engineer, as Ms. Love stated. And this first item that I have presented for you tonight is an ordinance to appropriate funds. These funds were given to the city recently by Woolhawk / Facebook, the project that is increasing some of our workload. And we worked with the Planning and Codes Department to get where we are on this. I believe in the coming weeks and months that Planning and Codes will come forward with a similar ordinance to appropriate these funds into their department to help satisfy whatever the requirements are of them. So just a quick breakdown. This does include an employee to be added to the engineering division staff and all of the things that go along with that. And there's one thing that the mayor would like for me to point out. We are requesting with this a new vehicle to be purchased. We have a couple of old vehicles that we would like to retire. Between 7 employees, we have 4 vehicles that are used, and we're looking to retire 2 of those and replace it with 1 vehicle, so that between the 7 employees, we'll have 3 vehicles that could be utilized for those folks within the engineering division and stormwater utility group. So, are there any questions?
Yeah, Nick, I got one. I mean, I know we talk about this all the time, and I'm not against it. I'm just asking these questions, okay? But was these vehicles presented in your budget for this year?
Actually, I did request this vehicle just with my normal staff, but certainly with adding an additional staff member, I feel like it's appropriate and can be handled out of these funds. The mayor did not recommend the new vehicle with the original budget. She could probably weigh in on whether or not she feels it's appropriate now with the addition of the staff member, but it was not included in the original budget though.
Mayor, this is just something that we've been into, you know, time to time in the last few years about going in the middle of the budgets and getting vehicles and that kind of stuff. And I'm all for the support, but is this the time to do the vehicles?
Well, realize too that this has to do specifically with this project, and we didn't know, but we were hopeful that this project was going to come to fruition and that this agreement would be reached where we had this influx of money from them to support engineering codes and planning. So it works out so that we do have this money available, and he has some very old vehicles in that department. And so I think reducing it down to 3 to be shared among staff, none of which are take home. I should add that too, because none of those vehicles go home. But between that number of staff sharing 3 vehicles and getting rid of some really old ones, I think is, I think that's an appropriate use and a need that they have at this time.
Okay, I'll support it. I just got to ask that question because I know other departments, we've asked them not to come during mid-budgets and ask for vehicles and other things. So I just want to be sure we're doing that. And I support Nick and them. They do a good job.
I appreciate you doing that too, Councilman Overton.
Nick, is it a new vehicle you're going to buy? Or used?
Yes, sir, it is. We are looking to purchase off the state contract as opposed to trying to create some kind of bid. Those are difficult to do. Our other option would be to look at state surplus, which we've done in the past, and most of the time those are pretty old and beat up unless you get lucky.
Well, if you go onto the state contract like you're talking about, then you can go try a local, like, you know, Miracle Ford or Miracle Dodge and try something there locally.
It's a possibility. What we've done in years past is there are, I can't remember where they came out of, but they were we've got a couple Nissan Pathfinders, and those are good vehicles for us. Just in the way that we can carry whatever equipment that we may need. We also have 4-wheel drive capability.
I understand.
So they suit us pretty well. That's what
hopefully you can use local. That's what I was trying to say.
Need a motion to approve, Linda?
I guess we need one to move it on.
Send it on, yeah.
Move it on.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move this on to council. Is there any more discussion on it? If not, Connie, you can call for the vote.
Vice Mayor Camp, Councilman Alexander,
Yes.
Councilman Fan,
Yes.
Councilman Fennell,
Yes.
Councilman Hayes, Councilwoman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Overton.
Yes.
6 ayes and 0 nays.
Thank you. Number 8 on the agenda is also going to be Nick and possibly Zach talking about our stormwater program.
Thank you, Ms. Love. Yes, this is Nick again, and I'm going to see if Lance Wagner, our stormwater utility manager, can go ahead and start sharing his screen. Thank you, Lance. As you all know or may not know, maybe we have some folks that are listening in, the city of Gallatin is required to have a stormwater program by state and federal laws. And so we do have a stormwater program with a stormwater utility that we began just over a year and a half ago. And as part of the requirement for the stormwater program, we are required to give an annual report and update to the council and share that with the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. And so that's what this presentation is for and about. And you can see the order of operations here with Ms. Watson going first, and Lance Wagner will follow up on her. And then finally, Zach Wilkinson will close us out. So I'll turn it over first to our stormwater coordinator, Ms. Jennifer Watson.
Jennifer?
You're still muted, Jennifer, Lance. You guys are still muted.
Okay, can you hear us? I apologize for that. I was saying I was waving over here because I'm trying to stay 6 feet apart and, you know, be COVID responsible and socially distant. But I'm going to have Lance move through the slides really quickly, and I won't take up too much of your time. I really appreciate y'all taking the opportunity to let us present to you today on our stormwater program. Both engineering and public works departments are totally committed to helping our community successfully manage our growth, both for a healthy and sustainable economy and to preserve all that Old Hickory Lake provides us in recreation, fishing, aesthetics, commerce, and of course, most importantly to us is clean water. So the municipal program has 6 major program areas under the state-issued permit that we manage, and I'll provide the highlights in the order on the screen. The construction stormwater program, the illicit discharge program, post-construction, municipal housekeeping, monitoring, and of course our favorite, public education, outreach, and participation. If this presentation totally captivates you and you're really excited to read more about it, I do have a hyperlink to our municipal stormwater report, which is online, their stormwater utility webpage. So the very first program element I'm going to talk about is the construction stormwater. And a couple of highlights, of course, this element of our permit covers a broad spectrum. It covers from the initial submittals where the engineers review all types of plans, site plans, FMDPs, PMDPs, drainage calculations. And then at the other end of the spectrum, of course, are the inspections and the compliance review and the documentation of our active construction sites. This past fiscal year, our engineers reviewed 150 different types of plans. Of course, it's both challenging and rewarding to review new development design submittals and then later inspect these drawings actually on active construction sites. It's pretty cool. We try very hard to ensure that we keep the environmental impacts to a minimum with the City of Gallatin meeting our requirements without hindering progress. But of course, as you know, the city is totally under a construction boom right now. By the end of this fiscal year, June 30th, we had 81 active sites. Now to date, we have over 93 active sites, but as this is a report on the fiscal year, we had 81 as of June 30th. We had 1,700 acres or 2.5 square miles of the city under construction. That's a huge amount of construction. Our stormwater technician has done an amazing job managing this totally important program area and has successfully standardized the land disturbance permit process, the improved communication, and as well has successfully migrated paper inspections to an online system. That was super challenging. In fact, last August of 2019, TDEC, the Department of Environment and Conservation, the state agency who obviously administers the statewide permit, they conducted an audit of our construction stormwater program, and we did really well. They requested that we improve and document some of our standard operating procedures, which we did that immediately and submitted it. So I do want to highlight at the bottom of the slide that our permit expires in September of 2021. The 5 year, it's reissued every 5 years, and we are due for a full program audit, and so I expect that phone call to come in anytime for us to get a full program audit. And I will report on that as soon as we're done, hopefully successfully with it. So the next slide is on our illicit discharge program. We had about 8 illicit discharges that were called into it this year. One of the interesting ones was a broken sewer line along Nashville Pike. Christina Bannister, our stormwater technician, noticed this odd situation and the bad smell, and she immediately contacted Donald Alexander with Gallatin Public Utilities, who is always such a pleasure to work with. I just want to give a shout out to Donald. He's just amazing. But anyway, he immediately came out and examined the situation and did some water quality samples, and then realized that yes, there was a sewage leak going on, and he immediately assessed the situation and efficiently repaired the leak. So we're thankful for those interdepartmental relationships that we have. We also, as an update, we are continuing to work on our most notorious illicit discharge, which is the Town Creek Seep over behind Paralee, between the Greenway and Paralee and Morton. TDEX Underground Storage Tank Division is working with us in a long-term cleanup effort to remediate contamination from petroleum along the eastern bank of the Town Creek. Currently, TDEX contractor has started the process of injecting activated carbon into the drilled wells in the area, and multiple seep areas have been excavated, and activated carbon is being placed in these wells right now and are acting as treatment cells. We are expecting a final report and a corrective action plan to be finished by the end of September, and hopefully there'll be a more detailed plan that I can hand over to you all so that you'll have that if you get any questions, and we can also schedule a town meeting with the actual scheduled timeline. So the next program I'll talk about really quickly is just three other requirements: the post-construction, municipal housekeeping, and monitoring. For post-construction, we have 70 completed projects in the city that are post-construction facilities that must submit annual reports. These are privately owned stormwater facilities such as bioretention ponds, detention ponds that have a long lifespan, and they treat stormwater running off that site before it enters our public stormwater sewer system. So we want to make sure that those are well maintained and reported on. To meet our municipal housekeeping requirements, we're continuing to develop and improve our operations and maintenance plans for our city facilities, management plans for our city facilities. They of course have also potential for impacting streams. Any areas that store materials may become pollutants if rain is able to pick up such things as sand, salt, pesticides, herbicides, oils, and greases, etc. So we want to make sure that those are all covered and maintained. As far as monitoring, we have 2 professional services agreements that have been executed. We have to get visual stream assessments and water quality sampling completed by the end of our permit year next September. So those will be started in October and November, and we will put out notices when those begin so that folks seeing contractors in the creek will know why they may be in their backyard or in the creek in the backyard. So finally, the last program element I want to talk about is our most fun program element, which is public education, outreach, and participation. Both engineering and public works are very happy to participate in programs that allow us to educate the kids and adults about stormwater. We love stormwater. We work alongside our citizens cleaning up streams in neighborhoods, hosting booths at career days, organizing a runoff 5K and a water quality festival, and allowing Cumberland River Compact to come into our schools and teach all 4th graders about the critters in the creeks. Unfortunately, COVID stopped us from getting into 2 of our elementary schools this year, but we hope to make up for it this coming year. I also want to give a shout out to Diana Johnson with Public Works. She's such an awesome person, and she's a great leader for organizing and participating in these events and for overseeing the beautification committee. So thank you, Diana. Finally, before I hand the presentation over to Lance Wagner, our stormwater utility manager, I just want to mention that Zach and Richard DePriest are super fantastic to work with on stormwater drainage projects. They have a totally special set of skills, excellent customer service skills. And Jesse Key is our stormwater crew manager, operator, and he has also done a superb job leading our stormwater crew. And we're so proud of all of these folks that work outside in all types of weather and working conditions. We appreciate them, and we wouldn't have a successful stormwater program without them. So thank you, council. We appreciate and we are especially grateful to you and all your support of our program. Thank you. I'm handing it over to Lance.
Thank you.
Good evening, council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you and give you a quick update on the stormwater utility. As a quick, very brief history, before I got here to Gallatin, Jennifer and Nick and some others drove the idea of a stormwater utility approached you guys and worked with you guys. And in June of 2018, the council approved approved the stormwater utility. In January of 2019, we started billing the stormwater utility. And so in January of 2020, we had our first full year, and with the turn of the fiscal year, into June into July, we had our first physical year of billing under our belt. So with that first fiscal year, I'm happy to report that we are collecting the kind of funds we anticipated. So when we set up the stormwater utility to begin with, we'd anticipated between about 1.7 and 1.8 million, and we're hitting right in that area. So we're happy about that. We're happy it's worked out to this point, and we're happy that we're on track. Just for your knowledge, I was always concerned that with the COVID issues, we'd see some dip in these, and we have not seen that yet. I'm not saying it won't come if we prolong it, but I'm very happy to report that our billing appears to be strong, at least for the past few months through the COVID issues. So I'm happy to have this. I'm happy this is working out, and I just want to let you guys know that that's our general collections and a kind of general history. Some of the things that the utility does is we respond to citizen complaints. And so within the last fiscal year, this is kind of ending back in June, into June, we had 93 citizen complaints last year, and that's a good number. We can't always respond to everyone as quick as we'd like to with all the development going on, but we do catalog those, we receive those, and we follow up on those as we go through the years. The two professional services agreements are in place with Neil Schaefer. So these are two watershed studies that we're involved with, and we've engaged a consultant on to help us. The Inniswood Drive area is a complex area of drainage networks that are pretty flat. And we're trying to figure out a larger scope on how to address that. We've looked at it from different angles in-house, and we've gone to a consultant to help get a larger picture and spend some effort on that. The other watershed plan I kind of want to mention is the Hellwood Estates. And I want to spotlight this for a second just because it's a partnership with Windsong. Now, a lot of you are familiar with the Windsong development going on. And they are funding part of this, and we are funding part of this. And so this is an example of what having a utility in place, we can work with the developers in a format for a public-private partnership to address these things. So that's one I wanted to spotlight for a minute. We got a couple other projects going on. Anthony Street, we brought this up for several years. We're still working on finalizing easements on the bottom and the routing on the bottom. Town Creek abutment, abatement project. This is one we're working with the Army Corps of Engineers. And we've mentioned to you several times because it's a long project. It's a Section 205 project with the Army Corps, which is fundings coming from the Army Corps and from us. So that project is moving forward. It's under design right now. And we're looking for finalizing design early next year and maybe construction late next year or the year after. For those of you that don't know, that's the large berm going in Triple Creek Park to help hold back waters from downtown Gallatin in a flood situation. All right. The other thing that we've worked on quite a bit this year, and I want to spotlight, is just our Munis work order system. And I should put in the InterGov system here too. The InterGov system is a system for plans review and organizing the city functions, working through that the planning department. It's been a large, steep learning curve, as most of our developers would tell you, but I believe that's going to help us in the long run organize things a lot better. So I'm glad that's in place. The work order system is another one that's in place now. And again, a learning curve is what we're working through right now, but we see definitely see benefits for this in the future as this organizes work between us and Public Works. All right, so future challenges going through this year. The Belvedere Lakeshore project, it's another one that's been around for a while, and we were making headway with it this year, and the Army Corps is still holding approval on a permit we need for that. So if you've heard that project past few years, as a update, we're waiting on a permit. So that'll be a good one. We hope to have that permit early next year and move forward getting that project completed. All right, another challenge for the next year is our GIS mapping system. In our permit requirements from the state, we have to have a mapping system of our stormwater system. And so putting that together within the asset management system within Munis is going to be a challenging feature, but we're working towards getting that done. We're working towards getting some consultants on board to help us with that. Some of the work we have going on right now will contribute to that GIS system, but we continue to work with IT and Jesse. And I'll give a shout out to Jesse. He's helped me quite a bit on trying to get a lot of our GIS information that we have into a platform that we can use it. And so Jesse's been a big help for us there, and will be moving on in the future. All right, we've mentioned the InterGov and the work order process. Those two things are software that will help us in the future, but we're all experiencing a learning curve trying to use that. And as you'll see in reports to follow in the future, and if you come to the house and work with us a little bit, those are things we're working through. And with that, I'm going to turn it to Zach. Zach, are you out there?
Yeah, thanks, Lance. Hey, Lance, before you go, I noticed you always working on that on Anthony Street. Is that going to alleviate some of that water going down Pay Street? Because it don't go all the way down to the corner of Chamber Street like it's supposed to. It's sitting right there, kind of on the right in Mr. Hall's house. Run into his, anybody contact you all about that?
So at this moment, I'm not sure where Page Street intersects Anthony Street at. Can I get back
corner
to
of the
that?
old fairground? Yeah, just get back with me if you would, please.
Yeah. I think it will, from what I understand, but I'd like to sit down and get the alignment. We can look at that.
Okay.
I'll give you a shout tomorrow.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Hey, Lance.
Yes.
One more. I did talk to Zach a couple of times. John D, I'm talking about Kay Rice's property right there where you cut over to go to General Tire House. Is that part of the same string you're talking about? John D?
What's that? I'm sorry. What is this?
I'm talking about Kay Rice's house.
No, this Pay Street is kind of like on the corner of the old fairground.
I know, but you know the street I'm talking about, John D?
Uh-huh. Yes. You fading out, Sean.
Sean, you start out good, but you start to fade away.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I know that I had 2 citizens from over there by Kay Rice just complained about flooding issues, and they sent me a lot of pictures. And that's one of the properties I said something to Zach about a couple of times.
Okay.
Hey, Lance, if you don't mind, the project, it starts at Anthony and it works its way down to Center Street. So, and it does go by way of Pace to Magnolia to DeMoss. And so it does snake through there, and it catches that block of Pace Street between Anthony Street and Magnolia Street.
Great.
That covers what you're talking about, Councilman. I think it does.
Okay, great.
It is a pretty large project that we have been working on for a few years, and now that we've got the funding mechanism for it, we're looking forward to getting it in the ground and getting that stormwater moved out.
Okay, we'll still kind of look at it, Lance, tomorrow,
Yes.
Make sure we're on the same page, because I know Mr. Hall has been complaining about that for quite some time.
I understood. Well, I'll touch base with you tomorrow.
That'll be fine. Appreciate it. Thanks.
I think Mr. Fennell was asking about property on Church Street,
Okay.
which we have been in contact with Lance, and I know it's on their list for evaluation. I do not believe it would be part of that same project, though.
No, it would be part of this project.
with that being said, just want to give a quick update on the stormwater maintenance and operations department along the streets maintenance. Like Lance and Jennifer were saying, the portion of those stormwater utility funds actually fund our stormwater maintenance and operations department. So it's specifically the work that's being done on the ground. And Jennifer, if you don't mind going to the last page, I kind of got it out of order, but those stormwater utility funds that are going towards maintenance are, last year we spent $751,000. Of that, $257,000 was on personnel, and last year we were about 60% staff. We're still working to fully fill those crews. Here recently we have had some better success at that, but has been pretty challenging to fill some of those more skilled positions. $157,000 was spent on, that's infrastructure actually going in the ground. That's stone, pipe, you name it. It's all good work and projects going in the ground that those funds are being used for. And then another $330,000 was spent for equipment, which last year we added a new stormwater crew. So that equipment was to allow that crew to perform its work. Then if you go back to the first page of it now, like I said, this is lumping together the stormwater maintenance and then also streets maintenance departments together because they're doing a lot of the similar work. Last year, and I won't go through each number with you, but kind of gives you an idea of the number of work orders that we're completing per year, and then how many we've got outstanding, and you can see we got plenty of work to get done still, but we are completing a lot of good projects and getting a lot of good stuff in the ground. That work doesn't include just normal maintenance like potholes and catch basin cleaning. Doesn't include all the weed eating and mowing and kind of the just general maintenance stuff that we're doing every day as well. Those are specific projects. Last year, the bigger capital projects that we completed included the Vol State sidewalk and drainage improvement on Gate Boulevard. We actually ended up taking over and doing the signal modifications on that as well. That was a good challenging project for us, but because I think it was bid out and there wasn't anybody that bid, or the bids were so high that we ended up, Nick and his group asked us to try to do it in-house, and we were able to complete that. That was a project we're proud of. We completed the southwestern sidewalks, which connected the neighborhood to Park Avenue down to Thompson Park, and also the area up around East Bledsoe down to Thompson Park. So it was a good project that we're proud of as well. Earlier in the year, we finished the Commerce Way Road diet, which was curb gutter, drainage installation, the road out there at the industrial park. And then, like Lance said, we finished the work order implementation. Right now, the only major project we got going on, the major capital project, is the Gray Street widening, and we're to a point right now where kind of at a standstill. We've got everything done we can until some right-of-way issues are taken care of. But if that can get resolved pretty soon, we're on track to finish that project by the end of the year, which included widening the road, sidewalks, and curb gutter, and some drainage infrastructure. Next year, like Lance said, we've got the Lakeshore Belvedere project, which we'll do in-house. Once we get the core stuff dealt with, we'll be good to go on it, and that's the next kind of big capital project we've got for
So Zach, we did get all the easement that we needed on Gray Street.
I believe, and Nick might be able to speak to it better than me, their department's handling all that, but I believe they're still trying to take care of some right-of-way issues that came up. I did speak to Buck today, and I just know they haven't obtained what they need.
Still, just one property owner that we've talked to, but we're having trouble getting back in touch with them. I'm sure we'll get it worked out, though. They're not opposed to the project. We're just having trouble getting them tied down.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I have a question on the payroll. Did it say you're only 60% staffed?
For the stormwater maintenance department last year, yes, we only spent 60% of the budgeted amount for personnel.
Okay.
So
I didn't know if that meant you were just 60% staffed or you had spent 60% of it.
Part of that is we added that new crew at the beginning of that budget year, so we expected there'd be some delay in getting fully staffed, getting that second crew fully staffed. That delay was much longer, and we still have 2 of those 5 positions we've been unable to fill. Just the nature of the construction market in this area right now, even after COVID, highly skilled construction guys are hard to come by, and they demand a premium. And just right now, we're struggling to fill that position. We've been able to fill some in our streets maintenance department through guys working through the ranks internally. We've got a lot of young talent that we got a bright future, but right now there are some challenges. Just we got a lot of youth and younger guys that we're all learning as we go. But do got a good future, and since we can't just go out on the street and hire a really skilled guy necessarily, we are working to bring them up through the ranks internally, and we've probably sped up that process somewhat. And that's a good segue. It kind of leads me to what some of the challenges we've had over the last year. And Jennifer, if you want to move to the next page, really the main challenge has been just, and this is for the streets and stormwater maintenance side, probably more for the street side, is keeping staff enough. Part of that's due to COVID. We've had a lot of guys out, but also we've lost the availability of the inmates due to COVID. That's essentially 8 full-time guys that you lost at the drop of a hat, and we've never really been able to come back from that. And we don't know when we're going to be able to come back. The inmates are available, but they won't let you do the classes that you have to have for certification to work with them because of COVID. So we don't know what the future is on that. So we tried to fill some of those roles with seasonal labor or temporary staffing, and that's been a challenge in itself too. But that being said, we've gotten a lot done, and we have had some bright spots in that area. But it is something we're still struggling with. Other than that, and that's kind of all I had on my end of it. But I want to echo what Jennifer and Lance said. We've got some really good talent in those departments, and I'll say those men and women work as hard as anybody out there in the elements, and they're doing hard physical labor, and they do a great job. And for the most part, to work hard, and so I just want to give them a shout out and thank y'all for y'all's support for that department. I know we've had our challenges, but also I think things are heading in a good direction.
Thank you all for a great presentation. You work so well together, and the stormwater program has met a great need in Gallatin. I think we can all agree on that, and I'm so glad we started that. Did you all have anything else to ask or to discuss? Thank you.
No, we just want to say thank you for your support, your continued support, and just take note of those numbers of how many construction sites are coming in and construction plans are coming through the city right now. That's a very impressive number for a city of our size. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Now let's move on to number 9, which is going to be Bill McCord with some rezoning requests. And Bill, you're muted.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. And this next item is the Greensboro Village PUD rezoning. And really, this is a cleanup item. This is a swath of property on the southeast corner of the Greensboro PUD Plan Unit Development, which was approved many years ago. And they still have a lot of entitlements and development rights under that original PUD. This is an aerial photograph that you see here, and What this includes is again, the southeast portion, 10 acres or so, that extends through the area of the movie theater. And actually, the zoning line now extends through the middle of the movie theater parking lot and a portion of the building. And it includes on both sides of the road of the roundabout at Greensboro and Greenlee Boulevard. What happened is that, and you can see it's a trapezoidal type shaped property here, very linear. And what happened years ago, and this has been here, I'm not sure how long it was. I think it was probably when this property was originally zoned, probably 20 years ago or more, is that the property was zoned R6. And what you're seeing here is an old zoning map. It's part of the original zoning map Mylar. And so we highlighted on the old zoning map what the conditions are here. And this property, even though they built the movie theater and then have some other vacant properties around it, was always zoned R6. So I'm not sure how the movie theater got zoned under R6, except perhaps under the PUD overlay. So what the applicant wants to do is simply take that property, that strip of 10 acres there, including the movie theater and some other properties in the immediate vicinity, and zone that to MRO PUD, which is what the property they have to the north, which includes the shopping center where the Publix is, and the McDonald's, and the property where Walgreens is, and the Volunteer State Bank, and include that as part of MRO zoning. The R6 PUD, which is to the east, is the development that's under construction right now, which is called the Knoll, which will be consisting of townhomes. So it's really a cleanup, and the Planning Commission did review this and recommended approval. And so it is a zoning issue, and we'll be taking this again to back to council, and if y'all move it on.
Motion to send it on.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, Connie, you can have a roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Camp,
Aye.
Councilman Alexander,
Yes.
Councilman Fan,
Yes.
Councilman Fennell,
Yes.
Councilman Hayes, Councilwoman Love,
Yes.
and Councilman Overton.
Yes.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you. Number 10 on the agenda is a resolution adopting an interlocal agreement. Bill McCord.
Okay, this next item is the interlocal agreement for the Meadows. Y'all may recall almost a year ago now, back in November, the city council did approve a resolution to annex the property and a plan of service, and also approved a zoning ordinance. But the zoning ordinance and the annexation would not become effective until approval of an interlocal agreement. So while back in November all of that was done, the next step was to get the county to approve an interlocal agreement. So that was sent to the county, and the county reviewed that over and again, and then we ran into the COVID issue. It kind of got put on the back burner, and the county eventually was able to schedule that and review the interlocal agreement, which is contained in your agenda package. So the actions that the county commission took is also included in your agenda package as an attachment, as well as the draft interlocal agreement, which is the same one, of course, that the county commission approved here back at a month or so ago. So this includes a 384 acre parcel of land off of Dobbins Pike, just to remind you, and east of the CSX Railroad. It's all vacant land now. There is one home on it, but it's all farmland. The master plan that you approved with the rezoning included mixed use development with a variety of zonings, including predominantly single family homes, but some townhomes and some commercial areas as well. And it also includes a lot of preservation of open space, particularly associated with the floodplain of the East Fork of East Camp Creek. So this is just a the final step in getting the property actually into the city. And again, I want to emphasize that the county commission did approve this on August the 17th.
Motion to approve.
A month ago.
You have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? I'm just gonna say that I voted against this at the time, and I haven't changed my mind in that I don't believe Gallatin is ready for this personally. Is there any more discussion? If not, we'll have a roll call vote to move it to council.
Vice Mayor Camp,
Aye.
Councilman Alexander,
Yes.
Councilman Fan,
Yes.
Councilman Fennell,
You're muted, Sean.
Yes.
Councilman Hayes, Councilwoman Love,
No.
pardon me, no?
No.
Okay. Councilman Overton,
Yes.
5 ayes, 1 no.
Thank you, Connie. Right, and number 11 on the agenda, Mr. McCord with an annexation and plan of services report.
Yes, Council, this last item is the annexation and plan of services report that the last one that we did was about 6 months ago, I believe in March. And this is something you're going to see every 6 months from us. This is a report on what we've accomplished in the last year for annexation. So I just included on the screen here the annexations that have occurred so far in 2020. Again, next week you have scheduled for second reading the Bledsoe Springs annexation, so that will also be added to the list. And we have a few others out there that are pending that you will see shortly in the coming weeks. The status, and I know you can't read that on the screen, it's kind of difficult, but you do have it included in your agenda package as a large sheet, so it will fold out. And that gives you a status of all of the annexations that have occurred in the city from 2008 till currently. And the reason we go back to 2008 is because with this plan of service report, there are 2 annexations which result in services that were identified in each of those plan of services but haven't been completed. And just as they were 6 months ago, those involve a short sewer line extension that was identified in the plan of service with the annexation in 2008, which was what many people call the Long Hollow Pike Corridor annexation, and also a similar sewer line, a little shorter one, that occurred, that was identified in a plan of service and annexation in 2012 on the south side of St. Blaise Road, essentially just north of Kennesaw. So those sewer lines have not been constructed. They have not been constructed because the property owners have not provided an easement to the city to be able to construct those service lines. And there's been no substantial development on either of those properties that are in the corridor where those sewer lines would be extended anywhere else. Otherwise, the other annexations include plans of service, and those infrastructure improvements are on schedule. For example, the infrastructure that's under construction now to support the Woolhawk or the Facebook project is part of that plan of service, and that's under construction. Others are all developer driven, so they're based on the schedule that the developer has for implementing their various phases of their development. So really not much in the way of change. We are required to provide you this report, and in 6 more months we will provide you an update that will address any changes in the status of these projects here and adding new projects as well based on future annexations if we have those. Be glad to answer questions.
Okay, and no questions? Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that plan of services. So we'll see that every 6 months now? Did
Yes,
you say?
ma'am.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
we've come to the end of our numbered agenda items. I guess we could go ahead and let public recognition happen again for any of those people who were trying to speak earlier during the regular public recognition. So Jeff, is there anyone that seems to be wanting to speak at this time?
Mr. Javance has his hand raised.
Actually, it's Michelle. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Michelle Javance, 1335 Long Hollow Pike. Just a couple of things from listening to the meeting this evening. The 6-month annexation report with the incomplete plan of service for the Long Hollow Pike annexation from 2008, which included our property. And then also I found it interesting. There's 36 townhouses that you all were looking at tonight on 2.6 acres that's zoned MRO. And so I was thinking, because I have 6.91 acres that we purchased a couple of years ago from a developer next to us, and it's zoned MRO. So with this math, I can actually build 93 townhouses on those 6.91 acres, but I'm gonna need sewer for that. So I was wondering, since the plan of service actually promises us sewer along Long Hollow Pike and it's incomplete, and since apparently the reason it wasn't completed is because there was a property owner, one of my neighbors, who wouldn't give the easement for that, would the city use eminent domain against my neighbor to give me the sewer that I need for my 93 townhouses? So that's something that I'd like to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Was there anyone else wanting to speak, Jeff?
Hopefully Vivian Huntsman can join us. Please go ahead.
Ms. Huntsman, I can see that you're unmuted. Did you want to say anything?
I'm afraid her mic's not working. Ms. Huntsman, feel free to call the mayor's office tomorrow. I know you've talked with Angela. I'd be happy to relay your concerns to the councilman by email.
Miss Love?
Yes.
I've spoken with Miss Huntsman, and I believe I know what she was wanting to ask. Unfortunately, her mic's not working, but her issue involves a decision by our Board of Zoning Appeals. And some of you may be familiar, she constructed a fence on the rear of her property that is 8 feet tall, and it also has the finished side of the fence facing inward towards her property. Our code only allows a fence in a residential zone to be 6 feet tall, and the finished side has to face out to the adjacent property owner, the neighbor property owner. So that's created some issues, and it ended up being a Board of Zoning Appeals case where she had requested for a variance, and the Board of Zoning Appeals effectively did not rule in her favor, but allowed her to do that, to have certain designs of that fence, but only under certain conditions, and those conditions are not satisfactory. They're pretty expensive, I will admit. So she does not want to comply with those that order of the BZA in order to keep her fence. And what she would like for the council to consider, I guess through the planning commission, is for you to consider a change in the code which would allow for the fence that she constructed. And I need to mention that she did not obtain a permit before she constructed the fence, so it was not even a permitted fence. So she would like to have y'all consider a change to the code that would essentially make her fence complying with the design standard of whatever y'all want to adopt. So that's really where we are with that one. And we have not taken enforcement action at this time. That case was several months old and nothing's been done with the fence. So it's still there. And we had essentially agreed that once she could approach the Planning Commission and or the council to express her concerns about the ordinance and how it affects her, that we would forego any enforcement action. So I believe that's in a nutshell the issue, and certainly can maybe contact each of you or some of you about that issue, but I think that's what she was wanting to do, have y'all entertain having the Planning Commission look into changing the fence code to allow that type of thing.
Bill, so what you're telling me, Bill, is you're not going to enforce anything until we can't hear from her, correct?
Well, we will take action if there's no direction from the council or even their planning commission to look into a code change. If we're going to look into a code change, then we would forego action on the enforcement of that. But if not, then we would need to start taking action. We've had some people in the neighborhood, obviously they showed up at the Board of Zoning Appeals who were opposed to the fence being placed where it was. The fence is in violation either way, even if the code were to change, because they never applied for a permit.
Okay. Is this the one that's there on Nashville Pike behind some commercial property?
Yeah, it's on Black Shear Drive. Yeah. It's on the corner lot there, Black Shear Drive and Lakeshore Drive.
Yeah.
Just a block or half a block off of Nashville Pike.
Okay, well, I think we need to hear directly from Ms. Huntsman before we do anything about that. Do you all agree?
I agree.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Bill. Was there anyone else in the public that wanted to speak, Jeff?
We do have Frank Marchese. Go ahead.
Yes, hi, Frank Marchese, 589 Harris Lane. I have two things I'd like to ask the council. One is a fence issue. Liberty Creek next to us amended the master development plan to put in a fence along the back of the houses that face our property. The developer had stated that he would only do it when the houses were complete. They have been complete, and I'm wondering what the timing is the developer has to comply with the master development plan. And I actually would like an answer instead of just going on record. The other issue that I have is, once again, the intersection at Long Hollow and Harris Lane. I'm wondering if the traffic study has been analyzed and completed, and what are the next steps and how long we have to execute next steps on this. I would like some answers instead of just asking a question. I ask every week, my comments go on record, and then I don't hear anything. I don't hear anything from my local councilman. I don't hear anything from anyone. It's kind of like asking questions in a vacuum. So I kind of would like some response from someone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marchese.
Okay, that's everyone.
All right, thank you. And Nick, could you get back with Mr. Marchese sometime this week and let him know what's been happening?
Sure. Yeah, I don't mind actually speaking for a moment on it now, if you don't mind. I did receive a report from our project manager regarding the intersection this morning. I haven't had a chance to speak with him about it, but just my initial review of the issue. And I'll remind the council just very quickly about the situation, just in case you don't remember. But the city worked with the developer to improve the intersection there with some striping and signage, where back last year when a survey was completed, there was a significant number of folks that were making illegal left turns from the intersection of Harris Lane onto Long Hollow Pike. And so after the installation It does appear that we did have a significant reduction in the illegal left turns. There are still some. It looks like about a dozen or so on any given day that folks will come out and make an illegal left-hand turn. But I would say that's fewer than folks making illegal left-hand turns in the 40 or 50 right-in, right-outs that we have all across the city of Gallatin. So I think it's actually it's improved the situation. It may not. I do want to look at it just a little bit more closely, but just my initial review of the report is we've done well with the improvement. Is it enough to make everyone happy? I'm afraid Mr. Marchese would say no, but I do think that it has been a significant improvement based on the initial report that I've got.
Nick, can I ask you a question? Is there a way we got some cameras or something that we can put there to watch these folks that are not obeying the law and see if we can deal with those folks? Is there any way we can put cameras or something there to watch them for a week or two?
We did put cameras up just to review the movements. Now we didn't put them up in a way to do police surveillance. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking for.
Yeah, that is what I'm asking for.
Okay, that's probably a Chief Bandy.
Well, but I understand, but I just didn't know if y'all had anything like that or not. I know we got some that we put on greenways and other things, but I just didn't know if y'all had anything in your department that, as far as traffic goes, that you could, watch the traffic or not.
We don't. We had to work with a contractor to get the counts done that we got done, but I'm not sure if Chief Bandy has anything on hand to do something like that or not.
He's not on the meeting at this time, so he's not going to respond.
Right, I understand.
That's something that would need a lot of evaluation input from our attorney because we're seeing traffic violations via camera as challenges.
All right. I just want to see the people that's doing it. That's all.
Is it possible maybe that we could get with Chief Bandy and maybe have an officer out there sometime?
Well, they're not going to do it when the officer's there, though, John D.
They might. If they're used to doing it.
They could. That's right.
I think that Chief Bandy has sent people out there several times, and so they must not be doing it when they see a police officer.
Yeah.
Well, I know I talked to him one day last week, and he was actually out there himself, and there was no traffic for him to observe, so he left after a time. But
well, that is one thing that we noticed, and so in our report we tried to look at it from a percentage standpoint because there was a decent drop off of traffic just in general, probably about 30-40%. Well, maybe more like 25-30% reduction just in traffic in general.
Thank you. Thank you for the responses. I'm more than I'm happy you're providing responses. The illegal left-hand turn is not my only concern. It's the traffic going down this road and the speeding and everything that happens. We have a guardrail that's leading over into the road now, the guardrail that was replaced. It is just a dangerous intersection.
Well, but Frank, I've always been an opponent and I always wanted to look at that intersection, but just because we have several people that uses the road and just because we have several people that are speeding, we have that all over this entire city.
I understand that.
And I'm not saying that we don't need to do something. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying when you say we have a lot of people using the road, they're supposed to use our city roads and we have a lot of people speeding. We have that. I can go on all night long and tell you about all the calls I get from people speeding all over the entire city. So I'm worried about the dangerous part of the intersection stuff more than I am speeding and people using it. They're supposed to use it, but they're not supposed to speed on it. But I'm concerned about the safety of the intersection more than I am anything else.
I understand the intersection, the safety of the intersection, the safety of Harris Lane itself with more residents coming in on Griffith Lane, people walking down, people bicycling, people walking their dogs and a group of dogs. It is not a safe stretch of the road. So what I'm saying, it is more than just the illegal left-hand turns.
Okay.
That's all I want to say.
Nick, how many people was traveling that road a day on the last count that we had?
There were, on the weekend, there was 135 people that turned from Long Hollow Pike onto Harris Lane, and 185 on a weekday. And there were about 35 entering Long Hollow Pike from Harris and on the weekend, and only about 50, just over 50. So altogether, you're talking about close to 200 to 250, depending on if it's a weekend or weekday. So it's very lightly traveled.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Appreciate you taking time to answer his questions right now.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anyone else that is waiting to speak, Jeff?
No, ma'am, that's it.
Thank you. Now, the next part of our agenda is other business. Does anyone on the council have anything to bring up?
Linda, I got one thing. I got cut off when we were on the discussion, and that won't take me just 1 second. But on the discussion of the townhomes, the Noble Park townhomes.
Yeah.
I got cut off some way. Something happened to my computer. But I guess this question's for Nick. Nick, is there a need for connectivity through that subdivision? I know it's a small subdivision, but everything else we do, we got connectivity. So my question is there a need for connectivity there?
Sorry, we ain't got a meeting yet.
You're speaking of the development at the corner of Airport
Coast
Road?
Ferry. Yeah, Airport Coast Ferry.
Well, I forget now. Can you tell me how many units are in that?
36, I think.
Yeah, when we reviewed that, it's surrounded by other private residential developments that are similar in nature, the apartment complexes. So the only thing that we considered was maybe a shared access with the apartment complex that's undeveloped to the west of it.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was difficult to make a connection since the other apartment complexes were already approved, and there really wasn't anything else to do with it. Now, we could have had another access point on Airport Road, but with it being just having as little frontage as it had on Airport Road, we didn't feel like that would be safe.
Okay, it's just a concern and a question. We always want connectivity, so I just want to be sure that that's not something we need to look at.
No, we definitely considered it and just didn't feel like it could happen here on this particular development.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Sure.
Councilman Overton, also those are private streets in the townhouse development there as well?
Yes, so they're what now?
They're private streets.
Okay.
It won't be public streets.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else?
I have something, Councilwoman Love. I do want to advise this council that the next work session, Ms. Nichols and I plan to bring to you a list of projects proposed for bond issuance. As you know, we've talked about, we're ready to issue another bond for, gosh, 3 years now, I guess. And we just kind of kept putting it off, waiting to kind of get some things in order as far as so that we could properly prioritize what our needs were for borrowing money. And I think we are kind of squared away now on the courthouse, and I think I know what we need to prepare for in that, and then we have some other things too. Now, I've asked the department heads for their proposals, and I think we have, I don't know, $50 million in ideas, so obviously we're gonna have to prepare that way back. But I did want the council to know this too, because I think that you all may have some suggestions or some questions or some ideas or interests that you may want to kind of toss into the mix too. So what we'll do is we will bring you a list that would probably be my recommendation. I'll show you what I'm excluding from a recommendation, and then we'll have something to discuss. But I just want to prepare you so that you will know that that is coming. And I don't know if Ms. Nichols wants to add anything to that or not.
No, ma'am. Okay, thank you, Paige. Is there anyone else on council? Seeing no one, do any department heads have something to say? No one?
Just briefly, Ms. Love, I wanted to clarify that the reason the Twin Eagles Phase 15 annexation and zoning is not on tonight's agenda for additional discussion is because the applicant sent us a letter and asked for deferral of both those items. So, and they didn't identify any specific date when they'll be coming back. So that's the reason it wasn't on the agenda.
Thank you for letting everybody understand that. Is there anyone else? Last call. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? I'll second. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Night.
Bye, y'all. Be careful.
Paige, it looks like it's about to storm where you are.
It is.